piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And now our land acknowledgement.
Fulton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe,
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect the four directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us.
All of these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thanks, Margaret. Moving on to item 1.2, which is the approval of the agenda. Everyone will have received a copy of the agenda in their package for the meeting. There's also copies here. Does anybody have any questions or comments with respect to the agenda? Maria?
I do have one quick question. In the original calendar, there was de-streaming, so I guess that is not happening tonight. Has that been rescheduled, do we know, or is that they're still planning to do that?
Do you want to take that?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, we've deferred it just as we're working through some of the PD Day materials, so we thought we would shift it over, if that's okay. We do have two riveting presentations in its place, but yeah. Pressure, no pressure.
I'm just curious if you know when it might happen.
I know the December one is in a couple of weeks, and usually one for, I don't know if it says agenda heavy, but certainly in the new year.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cassandra. Thanks for the question. Moving on to, okay, so on the approval of the agenda, do I have anyone that can move the agenda? Maria moved, seconded. Rick, okay, thank you. Item number 2, declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any declarations this evening? Seeing none, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, which is our presentations. So our first presentation is Fast D, which welcome Denise Colley, and Denise is quite often here at our SEAC meetings. So great that you're able to come here and present to us this evening. So welcome.
Thank you very much. So one of my roles at the board is the FASD lead. And together with our senior manager for psychology in special education services, we were recently in Saskatoon at the Canada FASD conference to present on HCDSB's model of supports for students with FASD. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about the conference and then also the presentation that we did. I will say, in all honesty, I think we're at the forefront of how we're supporting students with FASD when you look at what supports are even like across the country. There are lots of presenters about, how to support FASD in the classroom, but no other school board, I would argue, in most of Canada is taking a system approach the way we are. So next slide. Just so that everybody is aware, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is a diagnostic term that's used to describe the impact on the brain and body of prenatal exposure to alcohol. It's a lifelong disability. The prevalence in Canada is about 4%. So it is one of the most common developmental disabilities in Canada. It's also one of the most underdiagnosed and underrepresented disabilities in Canada. And each individual with FASD has unique strengths and needs. Next slide. So the conference we were at was the Canada FASD conference. There were over 600 delegates from Canada, US, Australia, Britain, New Zealand, and other countries as well. It included researchers, caregivers, and individuals with FASD, as well as policymakers and professionals. The theme was connect, inspire, and innovate. And one of the really amazing things about being at an FASD conference is that everybody is learning together. So you could be in a session and beside you is a researcher, and in front of you is a parent or caregiver, and then beside you is a person with FASD. So the presenters have reality checks happening in real time about the information that they're sharing. One of the things we learned, even just at the opening, was individuals with FASD who were moderating the conference and emceeing it said that they really would prefer that we no longer refer to it as lived experience, because they're like, it's not over. We're living with this every day. We prefer the terminology living experience. And you could see then, as you're in presentations over the 3 days, people making those corrections and how they're speaking in real time. So it's a really great way, you know, as a professional in the field, to learn a lot very quickly and get a whole bunch of perspectives. Next slide. So this is just Oliver and I, and we put that out there to sort of introduce ourselves to the people. Next slide. These were the learning objectives that we had for the session that we were given. And it really was to introduce the idea of multi-tiered system of supports and look at ways we can operationalize that in a school board. Next slide. There was a little bit about our board, again, just to give some people some context. Again, because there were people from all over Canada and around the world, we wanted to sort of plug, you know, what our pillars are and, you know, what our values are, and give some context to the size of board that we're dealing with. Next slide. We gave a little bit of an overview of what a multi-tiered system of supports are, and we call them tiered models of intervention here at Halton Catholic, but it's a research evidence-based framework that is really used widely in a lot of contexts now, that looks at how you integrate instruction, assessment, and intervention to meet all of the needs of a child. And the tiers of support begin with universal school-wide programming, and then the supports increase in intensity and specificity as the student requires it. Next slide. So we worked really hard on our spec ed tiered model of intervention a couple of years ago, looking at, again, how are we describing these different tiers, with tier 1 being foundational, good for all, tier 2 is responsive, necessary for some, and tier 3 is intensive, essential for a few. And for us, intensive doesn't necessarily mean more within a week. It's really the intensity of the collaboration and the coordination of supports that's needed because of the complex needs of the student we're supporting. And then you can see that at the bottom, you know, every discipline sort of has their own tiered model in terms of what those specific supports look like at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Next slide. So this is the organization and alignment that we have at Halton Catholic around FASD in our tiered model. So we have HCDSB supports that are tiered, and then we're also part of a Halton collaborative. And we have been for a very long time. And what that means is that the board supports the work of the collaborative through an in-kind model. So the collaborative wouldn't exist without all of the community partners. So there's about 20 agencies that come together to form the collaborative. We are a very active member in it. We support the advisory committee. I sit on the advisory committee and I co-chair that with a manager from ROC. We support the diagnostic clinic with psychology and speech and language staff. So we donate some of their time every month to supporting assessment and diagnosis for students in our board. And then we also have staff that are on the Halton FASD resource team that run trainings and case conferences to support individuals and families who are impacted by FASD. And then my work kind of in the middle between those two systems is to coordinate use of FASD informed practices within our board and provide consultation to our spec ed consultants and to administrators. So how do we look at operationalizing the tiered supports in schools? I think before we get into the model, it's really important to know that this model happened with no new money and no new staff. And I think that's something that we're really proud of. And it got a very ooh and ah at the conference as well, because a lot of presentations were, we got a government grant to do this work and this is what we're doing. And that's not our experience in Ontario, especially around FASD. We really have to figure out how to support students in unique and innovative ways. And I think what we realized as a system is we're supporting these students anyway, but we're doing it in a very reactive way. We're doing it when things don't go well. And then we're having to sort of rally everybody to sort of get things back on track. How would it look if we started doing more on the front end of trying to support before things went wrong? Letting parents know that there's key people in the board that they can reach out to if their child is struggling, letting administrators know who they can call to help sort of talk them through some of the situations that arise for our students with FASD. Next slide, please. So tier 1 that is really, as we talked about, is foundational. It's what all the other supports are built on. This means that we're working to ensure that every person in our board knows about FASD, knows about the strengths and needs of students with FASD, and knows about the ways that they can access support for students who are struggling. We will really talk to anybody who will listen. If people invited me out to a school this morning, I was out talking to a small group of staff about FASD. Next week, I'm going to be at a staff meeting at St. Nicholas talking about FASD. We will go wherever we can be invited. And we're really looking at that systematic implementation of knowledge transfer around supporting students. And these are sort of the 4 buckets that we look at our foundational supports as being in. Next slide. The first one is FASD Awareness Day. We've been celebrating this day, I think, probably for the past 4 or 5 years now. So a memo goes out to the system at the end of August. It's a challenging day because it's September 9th, so it's right at the beginning of the school year. But you can see here just a few tweets from some of our schools who have been acknowledging FASD and working through it. We send morning announcements and we send activities to the schools that they can do to help other students understand what FASD is. And then if we look at our next slide, it's really probably most important that you hear from one of our students about what the importance is to him of recognizing FASD Day.
What it means to me for the board, the HDSB board, to recognize FASD Day just makes me feel seen. Like, there's no other way to describe it. I feel like I'm actually able to be seen in a world where everything moves so fast, but the fact that this is a staying thing makes me feel so happy, because then that means other kids with this disability or people who aren't exactly comfortable with themselves because of it are at home. They have people around them to support them. And the fact that we have a whole day dedicated to us, to be us, really shows how far the world has come from when I got my diagnosis to the fact that now we celebrate days because of us. So long story short, makes me feel seen, makes me feel happy. Some things I've done to support FASD and, well, to help the school board recognize it, as I've talked to the SEAC committee particularly. I remember that day forever. I got to go up in front of all of these people and got to talk about my experience and how we can change the school board to let people feel more welcome in these situations. And I remember it made me feel so happy at the fact that I could go up and talk to them. I just basically brought my case, I guess. Other things I've done to help is I've mentored other students with FASD, how they can become students that they really want to be. And that particularly holds a place in my heart because I always love helping somebody else feel like they're more welcome than they feel by themselves. And I love mentoring students because it shows that together we can become something greater than what we are.
We call Dallas the one take wonder because all of the grown-ups on filming day had to repeatedly try and say what they wanted to say, and Dallas just got up there and basically spoke from the heart. And that is Tracy's son. So thank you, Tracy, for helping us to have Dallas involved in those things. So clearly, it's very impactful for us to be recognizing these days. The next piece of our Tier 1 supports is around the training and learning. We do awareness presentations at school staff meetings to provide general information about prevalence, diagnosis, strengths, and needs. We'll meet with smaller groups of teachers, especially in secondary. Sometimes we meet with new teachers at the beginning of every term. We also have a full day of staff training with an education focus. So we've developed our own in-house training that's a full day to support what it's like in our system to support somebody with FASD. Within the spec ed department, when there's a new social worker, psychologist, CYC, SLP, or itinerant educators hired, they attend training as part of their onboarding process. We also, for the past couple of years, have provided some release time so that schools can send staff to the training. We schedule our first training right in the beginning of the school year in September to catch all those new teachers who may not have had a student or not realize that they've been teaching a student with FASD before. And what we see on the slide is kind of what we want. All of our teachers leave feeling that they're more confident in using an FASD informed approach to support a student. We found that after attending the sessions, just go back for 1 second, teachers were wanting more. So we now, this is our 3rd year where every month we have a special topic session in FASD. So the last Wednesday of the month after school, virtually, we usually have, sometimes we usually have between 50 to 80 educators, EAs, clinical staff coming on a call to learn more about, FASD and trauma, or how to write an IEP for somebody with FASD, or really specific topics. The next slide is what we've created is a school scan as well, about a bit of a guide to how to become an FASD informed school. So these are just some questions we would ask administrators to reflect on if they're ready to welcome a student with FASD. And if the answer is no to any of these questions, on the actual scan that they get is the next step, right? So if you need an awareness presentation, it tells you, where to go. If you need to find information about community sports, there's links that schools can go to for that. And then on the next slide, what we'll see is one of our principals talking about why she feels it's important for training to be happening.
My name is Kelly Stevens, and I'm the principal of Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Elementary School in Milton. It's really important that staff have opportunities to grow their understanding of FASD, as well as build their capacity to address students' varied needs. It's really important that they feel comfortable asking questions because this in turn fuels the learning. Students with FASD are unique, and therefore our approach to addressing their needs is different. And this is why training is so important. FASD training needs to occur throughout the year as student and staffing needs change. As I have learned more about FASD, it's made me reconsider everything we do throughout the school year. Everything from assemblies to recess, the classroom, extracurricular activities, and trips, I've learned that pre-planning is key.
Slide, we start to look at some of our tier 2 supports that are responsive. So these are student specific, and it means that there's a student with FASD who for whatever reason may be struggling, or the school may be unsure of how to support programming. In these cases, a referral goes through our typical special education process, and then the FASD team, which is a speech language pathologist and an itinerant special education resource teacher, go out together to the school for 4 to 6 visits. The focus of these visits is to co-create a goal with the school team that will support both the success of the student and that develops the capacity of school staff to consistently use an FASD-informed approach. On the next slide, you can see that we've developed a couple of different resources to support this process. I'm a really big process person. So, we've worked with staff and schools to develop tools to support this tier 2 idea. The first is a programming scan. So when the team goes in to observe the student, they have certain things that they're looking for that might lead to potential goals. We have transition planners. So if students are moving from elementary to secondary, what's a checklist that would be an FASD informed transition? What are the conversations we have to be having about going to secondary school? And they're often very different for students with FASD than other disabilities. And then finally, a strategy development guide. So how do we start to develop strategies for students when they're struggling? And that's what we're going to take you through a little bit right now, is sort of that strategy process. So on the next slide, and a goal that they came up with for one of our students was to support the team in developing FASD-informed strategies to support tidy up time in kindergarten. We had a little one who was in kindergarten who was really having some significant struggles and meltdowns around tidying up time. So what was going to be something that we could do that was FASD informed? So the first thing we do is we look at the strengths of the student. If you can just click what should come up. So the first thing before the team gets into talking about any problems, we talk about the strengths and interests that the student has, because that's the foundation for creating any strategy for success. And then if you just click it again, then we also look at what are the areas of need. And the areas of need reflect the diagnostic categories that we look at when we're looking at individuals with FASD. So for this little person, these were the areas of need based on their assessment. Next slide. So the next thing that the team needs to do to develop a strategy is to look at the domains and the skills needed to do the task. So if you'll click. So what we ask them to do is then look at all of those areas of need and what do you have to be able to do to tidy up in kindergarten. So, you know, for attention, for example, you have to switch your attention from play to focusing on tidying up. For affect regulation or emotional regulation, you have to manage the fact that you're probably pretty disappointed that playtime's over and not really, you know, interested in what's happening next. From a sensory processing piece, it may be filtering out some of that external stimuli to be able to focus on moving on to what's next. So once they figured out how these domains go into the task, the next thing to do is to develop strategies for each of these domains. So you'll see that on the next slide. What they come up with is, you know, the expectation and then what would be a strategy to support the domain. And then you can see that there are some strategies that meet multiple domains. So that's a high impact strategy that we're going to be able to leverage moving forward in creating a plan. And then you'll see on the next slide, what they come up with is the plan, which for this student, it was that they would put one thing away, then they'd be invited to go to the cubby area where there would be activities and materials set up for them to do that would be high interest. So they'd be able to listen to music, they'd be able to color, and then they'd be able to rejoin the class at the very next opportunity. And then finally, as part of the strategy pieces, we ask that they do a fidelity checklist. So across Halton, these are the agreed upon core principles of supporting individuals, whether they're children, adolescents, transitional age youth, adults with FASD. So we ask them that the school goes back and runs their plan through this fidelity checklist. Are we focusing on brain and not behaviors? Yes, we are, because we did the strategies based on the brain domains. Have we considered developmental skills? Yes, because we adjusted the expectations around tidying up time. Have we focused on the environment? Yes, because before we're focusing on building skill in our child, we're focusing on co-regulating them and helping them to be happy and feel successful. You can't build skill when people are upset, especially little people. And then if we just look at the next slide, Michael, one of our special education resource teachers, is going to talk about his experience with the Tier 2 supports.
I think what was most helpful for the way the HCDSP offers our Tier 2 FASD support is the opportunity to bring so many different professionals together with diverse insights and expertise. On one hand, we had the FASD team that had the knowledge to translate that FASD approach to the day-to-day life of the student. On the other hand, we had the staff. We know the student best, we know the environment best. The Tier 2 approach gave us an opportunity to meet at that intersection and have some of the richest conversations we could. It was also extremely beneficial that the team members were from our family of schools, so we already had trusting working relationships with them. This allowed us to very quickly and efficiently chart a course for the students' progress, knowing that at any given time we might need to pivot.
Last two slides are just a bit of a recap again of that Halton FASD collaborative that we are a part of, and that, you know, I have to say Halton Catholic is a very well respected member of that collaborative. When people are often asking what we're doing in this area within Halton, so we should be very proud of the fact that we host Camp Unity and that we are so involved in supporting the work of the collaborative. And then the final slide is just around that assessment, diagnosis, and identification piece. That is so critical in recognizing this disability, and that we do work really, really hard. And Oliver, our senior manager for psychology, really is an important part of that diagnostic clinic that's run in Halton. And because of that, we often get our students, you know, moved to sort of the front of the line when it comes to that diagnostic capacity of the clinic. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Denise?
Great. Thanks so much, Denise. And yes, we're super proud of all the work that you do within that community. We see it a lot on Twitter, and we see it through presentations at the board. And I know that that collaborative is really strong. So thanks for all the work that you do there. I'm going to welcome Glenda Brown. So Glenda is going to be presenting to us this evening on mental health and well-being. Welcome, Glenda. It's been a little while, I think, since you've been here. So it's nice to have you back.
It has been a little while. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It has been, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to be able to share our mental health strategy, to talk about how HCD's SB does support student mental health and well-being. Next slide, please. So we are going to review the mental health and well-being strategy. We'll also talk about our annual action plan, also speak to the mental health literacy and action modules that School Mental Health Ontario and the Ministry of Education has mandated this year, along with looking at our revised mental health landing page. I'll also speak to the importance of why it's important to really focus on supporting positive mental health, having teachers engaged in participating in delivering those mental health literacy lessons. Next slide, please, Margaret. So we know that when identities are affirmed and celebrated, when students feel a sense of belonging, purpose, meaning, and hope, that they're more likely to feel that strong sense of positive mental health and well-being and connection at school. And that is what we endeavor through everything we do to support student mental health and well-being. And we know that over the last and global circumstances has really shone a spotlight on the importance and critical connection between mental health and well-being and learning. Our collective dedication to student mental health throughout these challenging moments in history has been strong and steady. We know that also collaboration is really at the heart of the work that we do throughout these every day in order to advance student mental health and well-being in every classroom to help every student nurture their mental health. And I look forward to presenting this information to you this evening. I'm also just wanted to share that our theological theme for this year is we are called to love and care. That is so aligned with our mental health strategy and everything that we do when supporting our students. I'm also just wanting to share that I'm very grateful to work as part of a fantastic mental health leadership team. Patricia Codner, who is our senior social worker, senior manager of social work, Oliver Frise, who is our senior manager of psychological services, and Cassandra Jack Caldera, our champion for special education services and mental health. And it's a large portfolio, and she does a wonderful job supporting our work. I'm fighting laryngitis tonight, so I just may need to take us out. I just wanted to set a context before we move on to the next slide, Margaret. You may have heard of School Mental Health Ontario. School Mental Health Ontario is the provincial implementation team that supports all 72 school boards in Ontario. We've been working, and they have been working very hard over the last 12, 13 years to establish standardized ways, intentional and explicit ways to support student mental health and well-being using evidence-based strategies, as well as training a lot of our mental health workers. And so since 2011, all of that work has now resulted in a new PPM 169 for mental health, which is very validating to the incredible work that School Mental Health has done over the last 12, 13 years. School Mental Health Ontario provides evidence-based resources for our students, for parents, caregivers, and families, for educators, for system leaders, for trustees, and they work very hard to ensure that they are also responding to emergent needs in the system. For example, with all of the conflict with wars in the recent few years, they've created resources. So how to support students through tragic events. They provide and respond by creating resources to support students with special education needs. So they're very responsive. They're very intentional with how they relay those resources through my position, and we roll those out systematically within our system. we work very strongly with School Mental Health Ontario. We also have a coach, an implementation coach, Jackie Brown from School Mental Health Ontario, to really helps to guide our work and support our work. We are mandated to have a mental health and well-being advisory, and we meet 3 times a year. That advisory consists of multiple stakeholders, both within our school board and with our external partners, as long as, including our wonderful community partnerships as well. Especially our students who have very strong voices at the table. And, you know, again, when we're thinking about, and Denise referenced it, but how to make students feel validated, heard, and seen. They have a very strong voice. They're extremely in tune and have a lot of very valuable input and are very willing to share their input and have their voices heard. And we know that mental health is a shared responsibility, and that identity affirming mental health, it looks like teaching, my apologies. Identity affirming, differentiated, and instruction is critical in everything that we do. So some of the key messages, we need to, like, when we prioritize mental health and well-being as a key condition for every student to learn and flourish. So, for example, taking time to establish a warm and welcoming learning environment. And that can mean we really work with our educators, with all of our staff on how do we welcome students into the classroom? What are the things that you do to get to know your students? What are the things that we're doing to create an environment within that classroom where students do feel that sense of belonging? Engaging in warm, thoughtful interactions with students and their parents, caregivers, using cultural humility to lead, teach, and support mentally healthy schools and environments. Ensuring that the programming that we're using is culturally responsive, is ensuring that we are using that cultural humility in all of our Tier 1 evidence-based programming. Engaging in our own learning, really building capacity with all of our educators and staff. For example, the first PA day of every school year, all staff in our board receive mental health PD, and it really focusing on things like creating conditions for students in their classrooms, talking about the importance of teaching mental health literacy, social emotional learning, and also to build their own capacity so they feel that they have the resources and insight to support students. We know that students now, especially with all of the different things that are impacting them in their daily lives, we know that there's food insecurity, we know that there is housing insecurity, we know that there are a lot of things impacting students' mental health and well-being. And so ensuring that our educators feel comfortable responding to the needs is a critical aspect of our work. And again, including our students' voices. I'm going to skip to the last one, establishing those authentic opportunities for student leadership. We know our students need to feel validated and heard, and they've been very vocal over the last several years that they want to learn about mental health in their classrooms. They've been very vocal and advocating for our student mental health champions at the secondary level. We have 4 meetings booked for this year. We had our first one last week, and it was very productive. And our students are always super engaging, participate, and they have so much amazing information to share and insights about what they need. Next slide, Margaret. So the Ministry of Education has, all boards in the province are in the process of reviewing and planning for the requirements of PPM 169. It's to be launched in the new year. And so as part of this PPM 169, the Ministry of Education and Health are committed to working collaboratively to build a continuum of mental health and addictions across all school communities based on child and youth mental health providers, hospitals, that is coordinated, comprehensive, and responsive to the needs of every student. This PPM identifies 11 key priorities and requirements for boards to be able to respond to. For example, every school board needs to have a 3-year mental health strategy, an action plan. We have to have a tiered model of intervention. And so they've identified those 11 key priorities. which will be launched and we take a deeper dive once in the new year. One of the things I will say, the feedback even from School Mental Health Ontario, our coach Jackie Brown has said that our board is in a fantastic position to meet 9 out of those 11 requirements from the ministry. We stand in a very strong position, and we're grateful for the hard work that our mental health teams provide. And it's very reassuring to know that we are following, we are ahead of the game, and we have been for many years. And so just to hear that positive feedback is very reassuring that we're on the right path, especially with the PPM. So I'm just going to share one of the requirements is that we do have a 3-year strategy. We are currently in the 2nd year of our 3-year strategy. The strategy is just a 1-pager, and it really does identify the 3 key priorities for the system. The annual action plan, which I'll present in the next 2 slides, takes a bit of a deeper dive, but the overarching 3 priorities are student mental health and well-being, mentally healthy learning environments, and inclusive mental health supports and services. The annual action plan, there's 2 slides that really identify the 4 key priorities that support the 3-year strategy. The annual action plan is 8 pages long. I condensed it for you tonight, but it does identify really specific key actions that support each one of these 4 key priorities. So the first key priority being engagement, that is student, parent, caregiver, as well as our community engagement. And one of the in the spring every year, we do complete a board scan through School Mental Health Ontario, and through that process, we're able to find those areas where perhaps we need to have more focused support or bolster different areas in our action plan. This past year, our scan reflected that we needed to bolster our parent caregiver engagement. Patricia Codner, our senior manager of social worker, will be leading a subcommittee. Stay tuned for more details about that, but that is really in responsive to what our board scan showed. The second priority is mental health literacy. Mental health literacy, I'll be addressing it in greater detail in a further slide. It's a critical element of our action plan, and it can look, mental health literacy can look and be presented in many different ways. It really is to focus on building our student capacity around learning the difference between mental health, mental illness, identifying ways to reflect on their own mental health. What does that look like? And as well, how to support students, how to support their friends. It's been very clear over the last 3 or 4 years, especially through COVID. One of the consistent pieces of feedback that we've heard from students is that they really want to know how to support their friends. So the School Mental Health Ontario has really done a fantastic job of creating mental health literacy lessons that addresses those key areas. And we also know and understand that mental health literacy also increases social connectedness, social inclusion, more positive relationships with the adults and mentorship opportunities, builds resilience and amplifies protective factors, and positive academic outcomes and re-engagement in the school community, increased use of services and programs. And what we try to do is ensure that we are including our students in many areas. We have representation at as many tables as we can to ensure that their voices are heard. Next slide. The third priority is the tiered model of intervention, and we'll take a deeper dive in a next slide. Very similar to what Denise presented for FASD, but the tiered model of intervention is really and has been the foundation of the work over the last 5 years. It is our service delivery model, and it's been very effective. The last and final priority is inclusive mental health resources and capacity building. And an example of some of that capacity building would be that there are CYCs and social workers that do staff presentations at staff meetings, lunch and learns related to specific topics, presenting to spec ed teachers, spec ed resource teachers, and offering training to a variety of different groups within the board, especially to build that capacity. For example, teacher training and Mind Up, which is one of our Tier 1 evidence-based programs. So we really do look to, those are just a few examples, certainly not inclusive of everything that we do. So like Denise presented in her presentation, we have our mental health tiered model of intervention. And like I said, it really is the foundation of the work that we do. We know that we have to meet children and youth where they are at, knowing that providing mental health supports in schools improves student focus, connection, that sense of belonging, and academic success. It also offers a natural place to reach students and youth who we may not otherwise be able to access, support and care, teaching students key mental health skills like emotional regulation, coping strategies, and mindfulness. These essential mental health building blocks do support resilience, promote mental health and well-being, and helps to prevent mental health crisis down the road. Our tiered model of intervention is, again, the foundation of what we do. We focus on Tier 1, as you see in the orange. Like Denise said, it's good for all. It is the foundation of the work that we do. We really look to focus on mental health promotion and prevention through this tier. We appreciate also that many of the programs that we deliver at the Tier 1 level are also in collaboration with some of our community partners. We co-facilitate programming as well. We have many programs at the Tier 1 level that really focus on skill building, mental health promotion. It is the preventative place. We use that as a way to cast larger nets, build the capacity, and it's often through, once we deliver those Tier 1 programs, where we're able to see and identify perhaps those students who might need more intensive support and maybe required to move up into the Tier 2. The tiered model does help to determine and identify those students who may require a referral, perhaps to a CYC or a social worker. We have a very clear referral process. We encourage teachers or staff to approach their administrators to identify the concerns. Often CYCs and social workers do no-name consultations. And often through those consultations, we can provide support through class-wide programs. We could mitigate a referral to one-to-one. And when that doesn't work, we move up the tier to then provide either one-to-one support or groups that meet a specific need. The main role at Tier 2 is really looking at that responsive support. So it is for those students, again, who might require that more one-to-one individual support that go on caseload, where we get consent from parents, caregivers to be able to meet with the social worker or the CYC. Tier 3 is again the intensive support, and it is at the top of the tier, and it really is for those few students who do need more intensive clinical support. We have specialized mental health services, for example, our social workers and psychology staff. We also refer to our external agency programs. We have Thomas Merton, and we also have our mental health and addictions nurses, where sometimes students need that more intensive support from a mental health and addictions nurse. And again, we really are grateful for the amazing collaborations that we have with our community partners. Next slide. We know that it is important to understand the intersection of equity and mental health and well-being, and it's important that we work within a frame of anti-racism, anti-oppression, and it is a precondition for a mentally healthy learning environment. Identity and mental health, we know, are interconnected. Affirming identities protects positive mental health and well-being. Ignoring and excluding identities can lead to emotional suffering and greater challenges in achieving well-being. We also have to deeply reflect on our own personal beliefs and biases and understand how that impacts our students. We work in collaboration with our human rights and equity team, our Indigenous educator, recognizing the intersectionality. And we also know that we work better together, and those collaborations and intersections are critical and benefit our students. So we always come and approach all of our work in mental health and well-being from that equity lens. Next slide. We know that mental health is also a shared responsibility. It doesn't just land on the CYCs, social workers, and psychology staff. It's important. We know that educators and all of our staff are really part of that circle of support for our students. And so what is the educator's role? We know that educators build really strong relationships with their students who do become that caring, trusted adult in their daily life. And we know that those relationships create that sense of belonging and foster that student well-being. And educators do want to help and support mental health. Sometimes they're not quite sure what their role is and how to do that effectively. Sometimes they feel that they might say the wrong thing. And understanding their role is important, what it is and what it isn't. And when it comes to student mental health, it's important to know that place where when they identify maybe a change in a student's baseline, when it's time to then reach out to one of the school-based staff for support. Slide. So why is mental health and promotion so important and a part of school life? We know that it helps students to maintain that sense of wellness and flourishing. It reduces stigma. We know that it also supports students with the development of their personal identity, affirming skills for coping during stressful times. And we know students are experiencing a lot of stressful times right now. It also helps school staff with their own wellness, along with, and I'll speak to it further down when we talk about the mental health literacy lessons. One of the benefits and one of the positive outcomes that we've learned over the last 2 years delivering mental health literacy lessons at the secondary level is the impact on our educators delivering those mental health literacy lessons. The feedback from our educators has been that the significant amount of co-learning that's happened for them. So for example, one of the literacy lessons is about myth busting. So, just myths around mental health and well-being. And a lot of the feedback from the educators was like that they were blown away by the clarity that, just even doing that activity with their students. Again, they had a lot of misconceptions around mental health. And so the amount of co-learning is one of the positive outcomes, one of the beautiful positive outcomes in terms of delivering that mental health and well-being and literacy lessons. And they've reported as well that it's impacted how they perceive their own mental health and wellness, which is a wonderful outcome. It also helps parents and caregivers with their own wellness. Parents and caregivers are included in these lessons. There's parent components to these lessons, so they as well benefit from this learning. And again, why is it important to help students understand the difference between mental health and mental illness? As I said, it assists with early identification of mental health programs for self and their peers, reduces stigma, it enhances staff capacity, and enhances parent-giver capacity as well. Next slide. Students want to prioritize mental health learning in the classroom, and they've been very clear. There was a survey done 2 years ago where they surveyed over 1,000 students in Ontario, and one of the clearest messages that was received was that they wanted to learn about mental health in their classrooms. Again, from people that they trust, where they have relationships with. So we know it helps students develop skills that support positive mental health, supports their learning in other areas, encourages conversations to help students in need access the support. through a lot of these conversations, they learn about what are the school-based supports within their school, identifies, you know, their CYC, their social worker for those students who don't want to see someone within their school. They talk about the external agencies and resources that are available as well. And as caring adults in the lives of students, we also want them to be well. So as I mentioned that the Ministry of Education has mandated that we are to deliver mental health literacy lessons in grades 7 and 8. We've been very fortunate that for the last 2 years, we've been delivering mental health literacy lessons at the secondary level. And so this year, the Ministry of Ed felt that delivering mental health literacy lessons earlier in the student's life can help to prevent students from moving up that tier, that learning is critical to understand, like we talked about, the difference between mental health and mental illness, how to help themselves, etc. So the plan for rolling out these mental health literacy lessons is we are hoping that educators will have the opportunity in January in a PA day to review the literacy lessons, to feel confident and build their confidence and competence in terms of delivering them. We're providing support for the teachers in grade 7 and 8, providing support from curriculum. We're working collaboratively with our health and phys ed education consultant, along with myself and our team, providing that support, kind of that wraparound. So they will attend a short in-service to be able to review those lessons together with their consultants, and they'll bring them back to their schools, their school teams, and unpack them together. The lessons are 3 40-minute modules. These lessons are created for teachers by teachers. They're very well laid out and they're easy to learn. School Mental Health Ontario over the last 2 years has created mental health literacy lessons for students from grade 1 to grade 8, as well as secondary. And the feedback, we did a pilot last year for grades 1 to grade 8 students. This is before this mandatory direction came out, and the positive feedback from the educators was amazing. They found that teaching mental health literacy early on provides that foundation. Those lessons are 2 per grade. Again, to start the conversation around mental health really does reduce that stigma. And again, the feedback from the educators and from the students was very positive. We are continuing to move forward with our grade 9 literacy lessons being delivered through our grade 9 religion classrooms. We only have about 5 teachers this year that have not taught them before, and they're being in-serviced by Vanessa Hurley and myself. She is the HPE curriculum consultant. And so we've been very fortunate that over the last few years, the educators have become very familiar with those lessons, and we're onboarding new staff as they are teaching, as they are moving into grade 9 religion to ensure that they have a good understanding of the lessons. And a lot of support is provided to the educators to ensure that they feel comfortable delivering them. Next slide. I'm just going to share a few. Again, it's not fulsome, but these are a few of the things that have been happening since the beginning of the year. We have been training suicide prevention training in ASSIST, that's applied suicide intervention skills training, to our new social work staff, CYC staff. And we've really extended that training this year to anyone who is interested, administrators, guidance counselors, student success teachers, and we've had a very positive response to that. We offer 3 trainings per year for ASSIST. We offer Safe Talk, 1 training per month, and it's open to anyone system-wide. We had the privilege of our 4 ICYCs had the privilege of delivering Safe Talk to 40 EAs on their PA day this past Friday with some very positive feedback. We have a special education equity working group making the N-word campaign accessible for our students. And we have created an interdisciplinary working group that really is focusing on the use of words, the impact of words, and including the N-word specifically as well. It consists of an SLP, ICYC, BA, CDA, ICERT, IEA, Spec Ed coordinator, and myself. And we're really focusing on creating resources to help students understand the impact of those words. So we're creating resources, we're using books, we're creating social stories, specific lessons on the history, impact, and response, especially for our students and maybe secondary for our GLE classes. And we're just at the beginning stages. We have a wonderful team working on that and really looking at ensuring that the campaign, that our students in special education understand it and have access to understanding what that campaign is. We're also really looking at capacity building for our educators around how to support our students in special education around that campaign as well. We have a variety of our Tier 1 programs. At the beginning of the year, we had CYC educator training in Mind Up, CYC Roots of Empathy, our Stop Now and Plan. September and October is a very busy month of training in our board. It's been very well received, especially with our training in our Mind Up program as we're expanding that program. We're also delivering a lot of Tier 1 programs in our specialized classes. Our ICYC, Polyg or Danny, provides support to Project Search, but we're doing some amazing programming in our specialized classes and adapting our Tier 1 programming to meet the needs of those specialized classes. So programs like Roots of Empathy, programs like Mind Up, PALS, Kelso's Choice, Zones of Regulation, Superflex, the list goes on and on. But those programs are adapted to meet the needs of those students in those classrooms. And our school-based CYCs really work hard to support those classrooms as well. I've mentioned our student mental health champions. We have our bullying awareness and prevention toolkit and mental health toolkit. We have those toolkits on our online learning system for everyone for all staff in the board to be able to access. And last week was Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week, and it was a very busy week in schools. But one of the goals this year would be that we're not just focusing on 1 week for bullying prevention. The reason we created this toolkit, not only for bullying awareness and prevention, but for our mental health toolkit, is that these conversations need to happen continuously all year long. And so this toolkit provides resources for educators, for any staff member to access throughout the year. What's really wonderful about it is if there's an emergent need or something that arises, they can access these resources to support conversations in classrooms, to reinforce small groups, and it's accessible for everyone. Also, International Day of Peoples with Disabilities, CYCs and schools are running activities to celebrate International Day of Disabilities. Our mental health landing page, which we'll get to in a minute, but I wanted to just share one of our pilot projects this year. Tara Herod, who is one of our ICYCs, Tier 1, she's been piloting this book called See Me for Me. And she has piloted it. I can pass the book around. It's wonderful. She has, I have something popping up. She has delivered it in 4 classrooms so far this year. Plans to continue throughout the school year. She has delivered it in 2 grade 2 classrooms so far, a grade 3 and a grade 4. There has been such a positive response to this book. With this book comes reflective questions for our students. It has created incredible conversation. And I just wanted to share with you some of the incredible reflections from our students when they're reading this book. It's amazing. So they have these are just some student kind of voice. So every individual has equal opportunity to make the most of their lives and talents and deserves the same care and support. This is from grade 4 students. They've identified that inclusion. It's important for all people, regardless of their abilities or disabilities, that they're respected, appreciated, and included members of our community. How powerful is that coming from grade 4s? Diversity, understanding that each individual is unique and we recognize and celebrate those differences. And empathy. And these are the 4 areas that they've identified after reading this book. Understanding how someone is feeling when they are feeling excluded and when they're feeling included. How to be a good friend, stand up for what is right, caring, belonging, loving, calm, kindness, patience. Our feelings and other people's feelings. And so this book has been very powerful. I will send it around because I think it's worth taking a look at. And we're excited to continue to pilot this in many classrooms and collect data on this and continue throughout the school year. Lastly, wanted to share that this has been a work in progress over the last 6 months. We've worked really hard to revise and update our mental health landing page. Shout out to Rob DeFranco, and I keep saying that, but because of he has brought our vision to life around creating a space for anyone who comes to onto our mental health and well-being landing page, that it feels like it is a welcoming space, that they are able to access the information that they need. Margaret, if you could just scroll down a little bit, I wanted to identify just a couple of things. One of the things that we added, and you'll notice the red button, it identifies if you or someone you know are experiencing an emergency and need help or in crisis, help is available. And when you click on that red dot, it provides crisis numbers so that parents, families can access. If they don't know where to turn, they can now go onto our landing page and see what different agencies and crisis numbers that they can access. Along with that, if you can scroll down just a little bit, we won't go through everything because it's really helping people understand what is mental health, the continuum of mental health and mental illness. It shares our tiered model of intervention so that anybody that visits our landing page knows now and understands our tiered model of intervention and how we provide that support to our students. It also shares the community agencies where we have collaborative relationships with. It's a fulsome list of the different agencies that we do have collaborative partnerships with through PPM 149. So if you have an opportunity, please take a look at the landing page. We're very proud of it. It was a work of over I think the course of 6 months, but I think it was well worth it. And again, Rob DeFranco worked very hard on it. The last thing I want to point out, and Margaret was just clicking on that, is at the top where it says English, if you look, people can access this information in different languages, which is something that is a new addition and very helpful considering the diverse communities that we serve. So thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share all of that information with you today.
We'll go to questions, but I just wanted to mention the book. So we had Dana Giel come and actually speak. I've known Dana for a very long time. She has triplets with cerebral palsy, and they are 16 now. So she wrote that book. She's a former teacher. So she wrote that book specifically for the purposes that you've mentioned. And it's been very successful in engaging in those conversations and reaching kids at an early age, which is when you want to start to sort of put in those seeds. But yes, we did have her come, and she SEAC presented her as a speaker, and she did come and speak on behalf of SEAC and the HCDSB. So yes, it was very well received, and I'm happy to see that that's flourished into something more, because I think that was her original goal.
Well, and I think we're responding again to a need that we're seeing in our schools. And I get the early intervention, like we said, is when we start having these conversations earlier in students' lives, it's very powerful, but when you start to see the kind of response and conversations that the students are so willing to have, and their brilliance and their intuitiveness with, with this book. Would you like me to share it?
Sure, if you want to send it around, sure. And a lot of it started too from, walking in public places with their kids, and other kids would stare because that's what kids do. They're inquisitive and and they would stare, and then parents would shove them away, and she would say, no, come over and say hi, come over and talk, see me for me, talk to me, find out my interests. And so she talks in there about how her daughter's a ballerina and her son Cole is into video games, and her son, right? So it's like, they're just like other kids, celebrating their differences, but also recognizing those connections that make everybody, connected. So so for sure, send it around. I didn't mean to monopolize. If people have questions, please.
No. And also to nurturing, and giving young people guidelines around how to ask those questions, like their natural curiosity around people who may look or feel different to them, and how to be able to ask those questions and not to be afraid, and how to approach a person in a wheelchair, or a person with that is different from them, and be able to do that in a kind, caring, respectful way.
Definitely. I did have a couple of questions, but I wanted to give the floor to my fellow SEAC members if any had. Go ahead, please, Mandy.
My question is just, how can parents access that book in the community? Is it available through the school board or through library or online? Is there a way to access it?
I do believe actually a lot of libraries do carry this book. So I think we ordered it online, but I am aware that some of our schools do have it in their libraries. I'm not sure about public libraries, but I do know that we do have copies in our resource centers.
I had two questions, Glenda. So one was, and I'm happy that you spoke about the programs that have been adapted for some of those specialized classes. But this is I have a question I ask it quite often. I've asked it all the time. But I'm curious about how we are intentional in working with our students who do have special education needs, who have specific exceptionalities with respect to the work that we're doing with our mental health supports and our resources and things like that, outside of those programs per se, but just how we are looking to meet those unique needs with the mental health work that we're doing.
So the focus this year has really been on, especially as a result of our climate survey, recognizing that some of our students with special education needs weren't feeling as connected, or that sense of belonging. There's been very intentional strategies to engage our students in not only in our special education classrooms, but just around that inclusion piece, Brenda. So I can speak to our CYC department. Specifically, our CYCs are in every school, supporting every classroom. We talk a lot about being strategic and intentional about how to engage our students in those special education classrooms and to involve them. Their voice is important. And I will say that is, a priority for all of our staff. And one of the ways that we do intentionally include our students is to ensure that they are included in terms of looking at our student mental health champions, ensuring that we're reaching out to all of our students, including our students with special education needs in all aspects of our mental health programs, using opportunities like our announcements, or including students in all of our activities for that sense of inclusion with intentionality.
And the reason I ask is that, the needs can be quite diverse, right? So we may have, students who have autism, who have maybe some specific comorbidities or things that are going on from a mental health perspective, students who are gifted. We often see that there's some mental health that's going on there with respect to their giftedness. Same thing when we have students who have other multiple exceptionalities we just know research tells us that students or children who have those types of diagnoses or who have those types of exceptionalities will often, encounter challenges with mental health. And so just wondering how, again, we're being intentional with those approaches from a school system.
So you mentioned gifted classrooms. An example program, when you cast larger nets, right now, there are lessons being taught around stress management. That was identified as one of the areas for our students in gifted classrooms. So there are lessons and resources being shared once a week in those classrooms. So it is casting larger nets, but it does provide opportunity for our students to learn skills, but also to be able to participate in those conversations and identify what their needs are. We try to be responsive to what the individual needs of the students are.
Well, you made me think of a question when you mentioned the gifted classes and targeting sort of the stress. And do you have anything specific for perfectionism? Because I know that's often underlies the stress, for those kids.
So last year and this year, we do provide, actually, Polly Giordani, who is our ICYC, that does provide support, additional support to our gifted classrooms. One of the modules she did last year was on perfectionism. That does emerge every year, and I think it's continued conversation. So that is one of the lesson modules that she always does address in the gifted classrooms, and also does work with our spec ed teachers around that as well, just to kind of continue to build that capacity and continue those conversations. And it is about building the skills, but also to identify what their needs are, create those conversations with our students in those gifted classrooms. And throughout the year, there are different modules and lessons that are delivered in those classrooms based on what those needs are identified, like based on the identified needs. And this year, they may be different than what were identified last year. So we really do try to be responsive to what the needs are. Stress management was already identified as one of the first things to kind of tackle in our gifted classrooms this year.
Anything that would be helpful for adults with perfectionism?
I think those strategies can be generalized to adults too, yes.
More questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Glenda. Really appreciate it. Okay, moving on. We are moving on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. There will have been copies of the minutes of the October 30th, 2023 SEAC meeting in your meeting package. Was there any questions with respect to the minutes? Okay, could I get a mover then to approve the minutes of that meeting? Thanks. Moved by Trish. Do I have anyone to second?
I'll second it.
Great. Seconded by Rick. Great. Moving on to item number 5, which is business arising from previous meetings. Again, you will have a information that was in your meeting package with respect to outstanding items from previous meetings. Was there any questions at all on that, Maria?
I have 2 questions, if that's okay. And one might just be helping my memory a little bit. It's not on here anymore, but did we send the letter to the ministry about our funding? We did. Okay, so I'm just forgetting that. So that's great. Did we get a response at all? Okay. It's usually not that great. Okay, and
We do, though, we'll share for sure.
yes, of course. Okay, thank you. The Code of Conduct Subcommittee. So I know there was something that went out asking for volunteers, and then one of the members asked for some more information. And I didn't see anything after that. So I don't know if I missed it, the wrong email was used, or I'm not sure where we're at with that.
That committee has been formed yet. We haven't had much interest. So I will put another shout out.
Okay. Did the information come out that
I don't know what was sent in response, Maria? I'm not sure. No. So
okay.
Okay. Okay. So we'll send another. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I'd be interested in that committee, but I was waiting for that.
Sure.
Information. So
yeah, we can send that out.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Questions with respect to the business arising? No, good. Okay, we're moving on to item number 6, which is policy review. Policy on I-12, management of aggressive student behaviors within our schools. I will pass this over to you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair. We wanted to share with you that we are under review. This policy is regarding management of aggressive student behaviors, currently entitled Management of Aggressive Student Behaviors within our schools. And it was last reviewed in 2019 before the pandemic. And now we're at the review year actually was last year, so we're a little bit overdue in terms of providing some input. What we are doing this year is in collaboration with the Human Rights and Equity Department, is looking through this particular policy in order to approach emerging student needs and growing student needs within our system with compassion and care and empathy and safety for themselves as well as for staff. So the timing of the review was originally scheduled for December 12th, but that would mean you would be giving us any feedback around the policy December 11th, which would be the day before going into the policy meeting. So we did get the opportunity to shift this policy to the January 9th policy meeting so that we can have a fulsome discussion, respond to any questions or suggestions, and then bring it forward in the new year as opposed to a rushed deal. We do want to, maintain the principle of the policy, but we want to augment it to ensure that we are looking at that the policy is responsive, culturally responsive, anti-oppressive, and again, is informed with, the knowledge that we have around responding to student needs in light of the pandemic, in light of a number of growing changes in our system. So you have a little homework, I guess, to take a look at the policy. We are seeking some feedback. I know in the past it's kind of funneled through the chair, and then the chair will send it to us, and we'll use that to inform our suggestions. But it's sensitive because we're talking about students who are perhaps demonstrating a need for support. We know that behaviors are a form of communication, and we're not looking at it as a form of discipline when we're looking at how to respond to aggressive behaviors. And of course, we're talking about your children, right? So it is a very delicate topic, and I'm hoping that we'll use that same empathy when we're discussing the circumstances around when we would even need a policy or actions that would come out of this revision, but wanted to provide that context for you in your consideration and in your homework for this evening.
Very much. Is there any questions? Yeah, Maria?
Just one around the process. So normally in the past, we've gotten sort of the redlined version with the staff recommendations. So it looks like this is coming to us a little bit earlier in the process. So will we also see the redlined version? Okay.
Yes, it's just that because of the timing of everything, we actually don't have our first meeting to do the red line edits until, December's this week, but December seems so far away originally. But so we wanted to make sure that you're getting all that information, but wanted to put that on your radar that will be coming, and then we'll seek your feedback with regards to the suggestions.
Good. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8. So 8.1, the SEAC program committee update. So I'm rolling this in a little bit. Well, I'm going to kind of chat about this a little bit. So we don't have a specific program subcommittee. We do have a parent engagement committee under which this would wrap up under. We know it's challenging to get members of committees, so I think having too many subcommittees is probably a challenge. So we do have a parent engagement subcommittee, and anyone is welcome to join. We are going to be setting up a time to meet over the next few weeks. So there is a few of us that are currently on that committee. We'll be, like I said, meeting to talk about timelines and projects and things like that. And so the program will fall under that. I'm hopeful that we can do something this year. SEAC has always managed in years previous to be able to pull together some sort of presentation. We've had a speaker that we've been able to put out, sponsored by our SEAC program, on a number of different topics. The amount this year is a little bit less. Having said that, so we've been given $500 this year. Having said that, if we do need some more funds, we can go back and sort of say, okay, we need a few more funds. We're having a hard time trying to find someone for that. So in that spirit, what I would like to do is we've always put out for people to send in ideas. And, you know, trying to take a look at, like last year, we had a presentation from Dr. Davis, and she, you know, she spoke about the gifted population, but she spoke sort of intersectionalities and equity and diversity, and she sort of brought everything in, which was really great in the way that it was approached. Years before that, we've had, you know, an individual who had autism who wrote a book, and you know, was able to come and speak to us about that, about his life and the work that he had done. So, like I said, we, you know, we're sort of really open. It could be an expert that we have talk. It could be, you know, again, Dana was one of the speakers that we had once that talked about, you know, the book that she had written and why she wrote it and the important messaging behind it. So I would really appreciate if people could send some suggestions. I'm happy to do the heavy lifting, as I've done in years previous, to reach out, inquire, ask about availability, ask about things like that, find out what their costs are. And then what we've done in years past is sort of brought back to SEAC, okay, here's sort of the top 3, or here's the ones that came back, and then we put it out for a vote, and you know, we kind of go from there. We want to make sure that it's responsive to what everybody's looking for. So I'm putting that with you for the program. I'll send a reminder out via email, but maybe start putting some thought to some speakers that we could possibly engage with to invite them to come in and speak, and then I'll see what we can do negotiating costs and hopefully try to get someone for a good rate. So that's an update on that, and also look for information with respect to the engagement committee. I know that one of the things that we do want to do, we brought this up before, is we do want to bring the CX sound bites back. I think a goal is to start those back up in January. I'd like to not recycle too much of the information we had before. Some of those topics might be relevant, but it's been a number of years. Again, I'm coming to you to request, if you don't have to write it, through the beauty of things like Jasper AI and other tools, and just even, you know, the ability for us to create content, we are able to create that content, but please bring ideas to us. You know, in the past, we've talked about things like consistency over the holidays, right? What that's like for students who are maybe off for a few weeks to have to come back into that environment in January, what that might look like. We've talked about specific associations. What is the Autism Association? What do they represent? What does autism mean? Those kinds of things. We've done one for gifted. We've done one for voice. So maybe there's something that's specific to your community, to your organization, to the representatives, or to the individuals that you represent, that you'd like us to do a sound. What is it that we want to get out there? And I had the opportunity to present at the Council of Chairs meeting, and you know, basically all but begged the various school and Cassandra can attest, but basically begged to say, please tell your parents about SEAC. Please let them know that we are a resource, that we are here. We want you to come to our meetings. We want you to watch our meetings. We want you to reach out to the representatives. So this is just one further way to get some information out to all of the schools about some of the things that we do. So again, give some thought. There's the low-hanging fruits like the IPRCs and the IEPs, always really important. But there's a lot of other really great things out there that have probably evolved over the last number of years that we may want to look at. So like I said, shoot the idea over. If you have some content, great. If you're more like, hey, this would be a great idea to get out there, send it, and our committee can work with that. Okay, so please send stuff. Okay, so that's that as far as that item. So I will send a reminder for speakers for program, as well as reminder for CX sound bites, and I would love any feedback that you have. Item number 9 is our communication to SEAC, and we do have the superintendent report. So over to you.
Thank you. You would see that in your agenda as well, although I have a few tweaks and adjustments as we go along. But I wanted to first of all officially welcome Jennifer Thompson, who is our new coordinator, into the department. She was at our last meeting as well, but in an unofficial capacity. So it's official. She's here today, was her first day. So baptism by fire, I guess, is the expression I would use, but welcome. We're very pleased to have Jody. As a result, there's been some shifts and changes around the remaining consultant positions because Jennifer moved out of a consultant role into the coordinator role. And so I've just highlighted a few of those changes for your reference. And congratulations to the elected, I guess Brenda was the new vice chair, new old vice chair, returning vice chair. I guess I won't say old. I meant returning. And Marvin, who sends his regrets tonight, again, was elected as the new returning board chair. So congratulations to both of them. And I'll just touch base on some of the items that that I wanted to share from the department. So today I had the opportunity for my first time ever to participate in the Keeping Christ in Christmas contest, no concert. And it was a bit of a concert. There was musical performances that we watched, some arts, different mediums, and I just loved that it reflected the diversity in the board, and every level was produced, but really it's the faith component that ties us all together. And so it was really a privilege and an honor to be part of that. We did receive the update. I had to co-op, but I think because I was thinking of secondary de-streaming, I wanted to just reflect that today's presentation was nicely connected to our ministry updates. So thank you again, Glenda, for that presentation. And then this month we had progress reporting. So of course that meant that there was an opportunity to connect with teaching staff to find out how students are progressing and reaching those goals for term one, and identifying needs and setting some new goals as a result of looking at the strengths, and just shifting the narrative from deficit thinking to looking at what the strengths are of our students and setting goals based on those strengths. So we know that that could be a stressful time for both students and parents attending those interviews, but we do really hope that students and staff are feeling supported in that process. So some program updates. The new CERT training was held earlier this month. Topics included psychological assessments, collaborating with educational assistants, and the IPRC process. Bless you. And of course, this was for those new to the role. We wanted to make sure that they received that important information. As a department, next month, we're going to be doing some outreach. We hear repeatedly how families are in need. So our outreach will focus on the Burlington community. We're actually partnering with Salvation Army, and they're so appreciative of our extra hands and our help. And we'll be redistributing and helping again in the community. So this is part of what we're called to do, and we know that in some cases those families wouldn't have much of a Christmas without that support. So we definitely wanted to take the time to do that work. I think we've already touched upon Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week last week, and December 3rd being the International Day of Disabled Persons, Disabilities. I was looking through some of the stats, and the UN has released some data saying that 1 in 10 children in developing countries have a disability. And so I found that a very staggering number. And I'm sure that there are some areas that are very population dense where that's more of a reality than in others. But we're certainly seeing a shift and an increase of student need, although our student populations are not necessarily as high. So it's this is our next generation, and they have so many gifts and strengths, and just again shifting away from deficit thinking. They're going to be our leaders, our taking care of us when we're all old and gray. For those of us who will be old and gray. I'm trying to fight that. But in all seriousness, this is our next generation. We want to arm them with the tools and the resources to make this world a better place. And so really, really impressed with the library of resources that we offer schools. Awareness really is the campaign, and so many, opportunities to recognize the contributions of students and individuals in our population that would categorize as disabled, but are thriving. So we wanted to recognize that as well. Friday, the last PA day that just passed, we had a professional activity day. So all over 500 EAs were involved in some capacity building, and we know how important that is. They're the staff that works closest with students with our diverse needs, and yet never get the time to sit with colleagues, break bread, or to learn from and with one another. So it was amazing. There were 2 high schools that we wanted to thank St. FX and Corpus Christi for housing all of our staff as well as all the presenters that day. It was amazing to just pull that off, and again to just build the capacity. We also, in a joint initiative with Human Rights and Research, we are going to, Human Resources. Human Rights was the topic around the Day of Disabilities, and Research to try and gain some understanding around the experiences that our EAs are having in schools so that we can better support and build capacity and respond to the need, because when we have staff that are able to feel supported, we know that directly impacts our students. So really fortunate to be able to collaborate on such an undertaking. And so we're doing it through a survey, of course, and hoping to get those results and to have that inform some next steps in our system. And then our fabulous Denise has provided us with some updates as well. So the behavior analyst attended the ONTABA conference and had the opportunity to engage with some of the most recent research in the field of ABA, including but not limited to valuable strategies for supporting teens with complex needs, risk assessment, and addressing safety needs. And I heard it was a great experience. We already heard all about the trip to Saskatoon. If you follow Denise and Oliver on Twitter, you got to see some of the tweets live. And just really appreciative of the work that they do. And, you know, Denise is very humble in saying that, you know, that we were applauded for the work that is being done in this board, but I would say a large part and contribution to that work is through the work of Denise and Oliver in our department. So I wanted to publicly, and I also privately acknowledged it, but I wanted to publicly acknowledge the work and the feedback people want. They want a piece of Denise at their school boards and to have presentations, so she might have a road show, but we claim her first. A speech and language pathologist and the communicative disorders assistants attended a virtual workshop on supporting children who present at Gestalt language learners in developing their language and communication skills. Our OTs from school-based rehabilitation services through Arano Kids provided a board-wide virtual session on Tier 1 strategies to support sensory needs in an education setting, and approximately 60 staff attended. And then we have our speech and language pathologists presented on equity and inclusion for students with FASD as part of the after-school special topics and FASD sessions. The SLPs, CDAs, and BAs facilitated the EA, a lot of acronyms there, on the November 24th PA Day. And then the after-school skills development program launched this month. There are 3 groups of students participating in the Children's Friendship Training Program, 2 groups of students participating in the program for the education and enrichment of relational skills, which is affectionately known as peers. And both programs support social skill development, and 60 students are participating in these groups. So just great news there. I wanted to provide an update on behalf of our senior manager of psychology. So currently the wait times, I believe 3 times a year they're reported. So currently the wait times for an assessment is 15 months. Many factors do determine the wait time, and given the increased need, it is, you know, it isn't a, you know, as far as the need of students requiring the assessment, there's a lot of work being done to ensure that it is as quickly as possible. That having been said, there are a number of students who sometimes require a much more prompt referral, and that average for priority cases is 7.6 months. So I wanted to be able to provide both numbers for your understanding of how we are responding to student need. And a number of students do enter into the Halton area with complex needs, and sometimes those needs, again, in priority, may shift or alter some of the wait times. But we wouldn't want to say someone who is, exhibiting and demonstrating a lot of needs, well, you're going to the bottom of the wait list. We have these fulsome conversations. It involves the school team, multidisciplinary approach. But I wanted to provide both of those stats for your understanding about our wait times. And then actually the remaining items on the agenda that I had, we've kind of already referred to. Mental health updates. We had a wonderful presentation. Thanks again, Glenda, for that. Our coordinator started today, so she'll probably have some updates the next time. Maybe December 11th is coming in hot. And then I mentioned in my report the policy, but we also had it on the agenda. So we'll leave it at that. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, I've got some questions, but go ahead, Maria.
Just two quick ones. You mentioned that Claudia Bauman will now be supporting Corpus Christi and Holy Trinity. So will she had the gifted portfolio. Will that continue to be part, or is that going to someone else?
It's going to shift, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we don't have someone yet for that?
Yes, we do. So for that, it's Fran Oliveira.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Fran Oliveira. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, and then just trying to remember the timeline for the CCAT screening. Does that usually happen in November or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So has that taken place
Yes.
already? And then next steps
I believe,
is?
yeah, so the assessment kits, I believe, are going out to the schools, and then the schools have a window to complete the assessments, and then they go get us, the results come back, and then we, yeah.
And that's in January, is that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? Best Buddies dance. Do we know when that is? Is it happening? Christmas dance?
We have sought out some volunteers. We're working on that one. So
are we having one? I'm looking right at Jen. I'm like this. Jen, are we having one?
It may not be a Christmas dance. We're looking into some alternative options. Right now, we haven't got one happening at the moment.
So is this the first year we have not had this? Than COVID? I feel like it is.
It may be. I'm not sure, because historically I'm not 100% sure. I know we did have one last year. The school that hosted it last year, that department head is actually not with us right now.
Yeah.
And there's just some other logistical pieces around it as well that we've been trying to work through, although we've managed to kind of work through all of those. And we are still looking at having something. It just may not be in time for Christmas. So it may be a winter type of a dance. It may be an alternative format. So we're just exploring some other options around it, but we don't have a set date for anything yet.
Keep us posted. That is such an important, amazing event. So I hope that you're able to overcome some of those barriers and make it happen, whether it's, Christmas or otherwise. I would be really sad to not see that transpire. So good luck with your planning. Thank you for that update.
I think they said they were looking for volunteers.
I would love to volunteer for something else. If you need help with that principal at that school, I'm happy to make that phone call. That I can. I'm going to cheer his football team on tomorrow in Windsor, so that I can do for you. But okay, just keep us posted because it's such a great event. It really, really, truly is. The other thing that I had a question for is I had the opportunity to tour some schools last week, and I always, keep an eye on this. And I wanted, and this hasn't asked in a while. I know I haven't asked this in a little while, but it was hot for, a period of time and then didn't hear a lot, but snoozling rooms. So do we have them at each of our schools? Do we not have them? Are we supposed to have them? Is there a plan to get them if we don't have them? I was a little bit surprised at one of the schools I visited. They did not have a snoozling room. They had a room that had some mats in it, but they did not have any of those elements of a sensory room or otherwise. So I'm wondering if anyone knows about that.
So we are navigating and trying to build capacity in that area. We want to make sure that staff are accessing and are aware of the number of ways we can respond to student needs. So there may be some inconsistencies in terms of every school having one. And or even knowing how to access and use them. So we're being proactive actually in trying to do some training, both in the school-based staff, so our cert sets, department heads, and then we'll be having some conversations with administrators just to get an audit as to what is in the schools and what we can do to support, so that every student has access if they require it. So
that's great to hear, because I think there was some mixed messaging, like there was some conversation about funding being tied specifically to that child. And I know that that could be for some components, but then again, I've also seen other schools that have had the ability to have, lighting and, snoozling cart and, anyways, it was a little bit transparently, it was a little bit disappointing to see the school that actually has quite a high population of children with autism to not have a snooze on room. So they did have a specific space that did have mats in it, but there was absolutely no materials in there whatsoever, no calming, like no lighting, no swing, no anything. So if you could, I think it'd be important, because it would be really upsetting to know that one school has that and other schools don't. And it would be such a huge advantage for both the students as well as the support staff that's working with them to have that environment to go into. So if you could, that would be great if you could take a look and get back.
Yeah, we want to do an audit and just understand. We know that there's been changeover, staff change, administrators change. So we want to make sure that everyone, feels confident and knows that this is something that we support. And so we're taking some time to really have those conversations around, okay, what does it look like? What doesn't it look like? What could be a good example, a good model? What are some areas that, and just really build capacity from within, but taking an audit at this point to find out what is in the system, what's in the schools, and responding from that point.
Sorry, I'm being the fly in the honey today. Okay, over to you, Trustee Powell, for the trustee update. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up too. That's a good point. So thanks to Superintendent Jack Caldero, I don't have much to say anymore. You are so thorough that I was like, oh, scratch that, scratch that, scratch that. Yeah, no, that's great. So just a couple of points from a board perspective or trustee perspective. On October 18th, this was from our Student Senate update. The Student Senate on October 18th has a subcommittee. It's their special education subcommittee. They passed their Best Buddies survey proposal. So they'll be sending out a survey form to all secondary school Best Buddy groups. And with the data collected, they are going to cultivate a report highlighting any discrepancies within the program. And they're going to create recommendations on how we can uplift and support all the Best Buddy programs across the board. So the Student Senate hopes to work with SEAC and with Superintendent. You'll have that on your next report.
I was going to say, yeah, I was told that they're doing some busy work and they're really excited they were going to book a meeting with me and want to share their findings. So
that's what they said throughout the collection and the report creation process. They're going to work closely with SEAC and yourself, Superintendent Jack Caldera. Sorry. And I thought that was they're excellent because they are boots on the ground. They can get proper feedback as well. So, so that was a highlight as well. Just a quick note on November 13th, the Halton Catholic Children's Foundation had an evening with Bishop Crosby, and that was an opportunity to gather school board, staff, parishes, community leaders in celebration of the charity. And this organization raises funds to help cover costs for basic necessities, but it also includes learning technology, which is a really good thing, as well as school activities with so any fees like school trips, team fees, learning materials. So that's a great organization to support. I won't do that one. Don't do that one. We talked about December 3rd, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, as well, that we are recognizing it throughout the week of starting today. So, and December 11th coming up is Educational Assistant Appreciation Day, which is huge. They get us through a lot of days, so grateful for them. And then one more point that is interesting, we learned about TVO has their Learn Mathify, a free online math support for both students and educators. This is free one-on-one live math tutoring for students in grades 4 to 12, and it's Ontario certified tutors. It's Monday to Friday, 9 till 9, Saturday and Sunday, 3 till 9. So I learned about that, and I plan to take advantage of it with one of my children because it's not working me learning math, the new math. So that was in partnership with our lovely superintendent. That's the trustee report.
Is there any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Could you just repeat the name of that program, please, trustee?
Yes, and I'm happy to send it out. I have the link. So if I can send it to Margaret, and Margaret will send it out. Sorry, I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Perfect. Is there any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Brianna.
I just had a question about the Best Buddies, since now you've both touched on it and you said a survey is going out. How do you contact staff? How do you build capacity at other schools to run this program, right? So you have great schools that have successful that are running it. And I'm at a school that for 3 years that really trying to get it off the ground, and like I'm bugging all the time, and bless their heart, they're really trying, and can get 6 students to volunteer to be a Best Buddy. And we have 3 classes of life skill students, right? So like, how does this work? Like, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, do we get these students that are champions at other schools to come and speak on this and say like, what a great opportunity this is, you know, not just like if you're looking at university, what type of field that you want to go into, right? They might not be thinking that far ahead, but I'm at a school where we're struggling to get this off the ground, and it's so desperately needed. And I think it's such a great program that we're just missing out in this board, right?
I think that's what the beauty of this student initiative is going to be, that they recognize that it's thriving in some communities, and then just like you said, hard to get off the ground. So they want to really establish equity of access so that all schools have the opportunity, and to build capacity. Like the student trustees want to build capacity amongst the other high school, secondary schools, so that they feel that they can also do it, and they're willing to take their findings and share amongst the other schools. So I can appreciate it. It's frustrating, but a little bit of patience. It's starting, and I'm learning about all these programs as well. And so I'm really looking forward to my meeting and my date with the team that's spearheading this research, and looking at ways that we can partner up and respond to the student need to ensure that there is equity of access. That's our big push. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we're getting there. We're trying to get this all, off the ground.
Really good.
No, it's good.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Can I just ask, when do you when is the survey going out, and when?
There's already something. I believe there's something already in the works. Like they have said to me that they're going to be requesting a meeting with me. Like it sounds very soon. So I haven't seen the survey questions. I don't know who they're surveying, but whatever it is, I mean, yeah, my role will be to help navigate and support however we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure the questions were like who's navigating, but I think you answered that.
Yeah, I think it's just around the, how comfortable are you with are you familiar with the program? How comfortable are you with running the program, and questions of that nature, because they want to see it thriving in all the schools. This is their personal project that they want to see come to fruition. So my understanding is that the questions are going to be about what do they need in order to, what makes it successful in the schools that it's already successful, and then what do you need in order to make it successful? And then that's where I come in, apparently, is to find out where the gaps are and to help bridge those gaps.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, which is SEAC discussion items / questions. Do we have anything this evening? Maria?
So I just want to bring forth an issue that I have brought forth in the past. It was definitely, I think it was before Superintendent Cassandra Jack Caldera was here, and definitely before Jen Thompson became SEAC coordinator, since that was today. But this issue of whether or not you need an identification to have an IEP, which we know that we don't necessarily. But again, just this past week, I heard from a parent that the principal of the school said, you can't have an IEP without identification. So, not putting you on the spot because I know you just got here, but why do principals not understand this? And considering also that we have brought it forward here, and I think more than once, if I'm, yeah.
So we're in the business of building capacity, and you know, really want to ensure that all students' needs are responded to. We do have non-identified IEPs, and we have IEPs with identifications, and we have student needs that surface, and we respond. We're always in the business of responding. If there are any questions that administrators have around student needs, we have a team that's here to support, and we do try to foster that collaboration. But you know, I think all administrators are trying to operate in the best interests of the students, and I would like to believe that that is the case in this situation as well, not having any of the contextual information. But if there's ever an opportunity to build capacity, have a conversation, enlighten, we do, and we try to incorporate that in our meetings with the secondary and elementary administrators, just because we know there's so much to know when you are running a school. I know because I was there, it feels like yesterday, but I know it's been a few months. Actually, it's going to be 4 months on Friday. So I know that there's a lot that administrators are juggling and managing at the school level. And I would hate to think that anyone would intentionally want to be a barrier for a student. But if there's capacity needs that we need to respond to, that's where we come in, and we want to support. So if there's misunderstandings, or if even what the parent walks away believing maybe is different from what the administrator said, like, we're here to help navigate those situations so that there isn't, you know, that no student is left without feeling supported and isn't getting the supports that they need so that they can access the curriculum, and or so, you know, the social curriculum, the, you know, anything that you know, we don't want any barriers. So certainly wanted to make sure that that was the takeaway from.
Well, I guess, and again, like, we're not here to talk about individual situations, and I wouldn't share any information that might compromise that anyways. But I mean, I think there are I'll just say there are situations where the parents don't feel that the child's needs are being met. And unfortunately, quite often by the time they come to ABC or another association, like, they've already been, you know, and I said this before, like, they've already been through, they don't want to go back after we tell them, no, this is the process, right? They're already kind of done. But it's concerning to me that a principal, like, can you send an email to all the principals, like, just a short one? Like, I mean, it's concerning to me that a principal would say that. And, you know, whether or not it's appropriate in that situation, that's a different conversation. But the fact that a principal would say, and my understanding is this is what they said, like, you can't have an IEP without an identification. That is not correct, right? So that's concerning. So I'm not sure how we fix it.
I think one of the things to keep in mind too is the process for communication. So if you have a parent who is struggling or has a concern about the understanding or the process or procedure, they should go to the superintendent of the schools. So principal, I'd encourage somebody to try again. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. And I'm not willing to concede that the people don't understand that. So before we start sending memos or communications out, I'm not sure, possibly there's a misunderstanding. This is not unusual. Not sure how it works with the teacher, so I go to the principal. Not sure how things worked out with the principal, I go to a superintendent. I would encourage any parent to do that.
So I feel like we're having the same conversation. And again, I know some people weren't here, but when a parent is told something by a principal, they don't expect it to not be accurate, right? So they're not going to go to the superintendent because they expect that what the information they receive is accurate. And also, quite frankly, parents are not comfortable escalating. Like, and again, a lot of times by the time they come to an association, like they've been trying already and they're kind of frustrated, and parents are, and you know, I don't believe that this actually happens, but parents are concerned that if they're too noisy, too much of a pain, that their child will suffer. Like I've heard that from many parents. They're afraid that their child will get worse. And I try to tell them, like, I don't believe that happens. I've been a big pain. I think my kids were treated pretty good. I will say that. However, parents have that fear, and you can't, you know, and I can't guarantee to them that it won't happen, right? We can't get, and that's, so again, you know, I feel like I sound like a bit of a broken record, but it's really quite simple. Like this is inaccurate. Principals should not be giving inaccurate information like that. I think that we have to agree on that. If we can't agree on that, that's a problem. So I have an issue, like it's an issue. I don't know what else to say, but I don't feel like I'm getting a solution here.
So is there an opportunity? So and I don't want it to pile on at all, but I do hear what Maria's saying, and as someone who has themselves navigated the system for 16 years, 14 years, I do understand that, and we hear the same concerns from parents quite often who come to us. And again, there's no ill intent. This is not about somebody who is, you know, intentionally not giving someone information, but we have parents often who come with misinformation about IEPs, especially IPRCs. I had a person the other day who came to me with respect to, again, they're waiting for an assessment, but they can't get an IEP. So I do think that there may be an opportunity. Listen, principals, we know that we have new principals that come in. They may not have been in that situation before. They may have a whole new staff in the school from their CERT perspective. So is there something that we can be doing? We do have a resource. I haven't looked at our Spec Ed resource in a while, that guide to Spec Ed. Does that give enough information? Is it being, and I know that we brought this up to, and I think Maria, you'll agree with this. We've also said repeatedly about that guide being given on a regular basis, even having a mechanism to have it signed off, to ensure that information is being accurately understood, provided in a timely and consistent manner. Because I agree, and I also worry often about families who are exhausted, who are tired, who don't know who to go to, who English is a second language. It is a struggle, and again, it's not any ill intent, but I do think we have an opportunity to try. And anytime a parent comes to me waiving a policy, I'm like, we have gotten way too far off the track if we're waiving policies. So perhaps it's an opportunity to take a look at what is being sent out to schools, to principals, what is the training that's being done, and do we have an opportunity to send something out just to, you know, ensure that they have that information. Something to think about.
Yeah, and I maybe, you know, wasn't as eloquent, you know, but I really did, I really was saying, you know, we continue to build capacity. So when we get the feedback, we do go back and we want to make sure that there isn't any miscommunication or misunderstanding. That being said, you know, like there are very clear, you know, guidelines around development of IEP and what a non-identified IEP and an identified IEP could and would look like. So we are, you know, we are inserting ourselves in those conversations. We are inserting ourselves with the administrators so that there's that relationship piece, because sometimes there are things being said, but it's the relationship piece that, you know, like to your point, that are, you know, you're tired, you're exhausted, you've gone to this school, you've gone to that school. We're talking about vulnerable students and in some cases even more vulnerable parents. So it is important that we are responsive, and part of the capacity building is to ensure that all our staff understand and know the differences so that there isn't that miscommunication. So
I smell a soundbite. Sorry. Yeah.
You took the words out of my mouth. I just said, this is your sound bite. Like your first sound bite, hitting on what the director said, that maybe parents don't realize that if I didn't get an answer from the teacher, go to the principal. Some people think it stops, like the buck stops off the principal. There's parents like me who have the superintendent and trustee on speed dial, right? And those parents don't know, you know, what steps to take and say, hey, even call your trustee, I need help to navigate and get that, you know, to help them navigate the system with you because you're exhausted and tired. And you don't want to be fighting the system, right? You want to be working as a team. And sometimes when it gets to that level, it, you know, emotions are involved. So I think even showing parents what are the steps to do and follow as a procedure and have the guideline there, right? Like I think that's a huge step for a lot of parents because they don't know where to go after the principal.
This could be a parent engagement committee project. We have a soundbite like that. Maybe we need to just take a look to make sure it includes that information. And there is also a really excellent piece that Easter Seals put together. It doesn't matter what the exceptionality is. Allison Morris has done some tremendous work advocating at the ministry level. She's been on Maxi. She's been on a bunch of different things. She created a resource that she's happy to share that actually does that navigation piece. That's like, if you have this, go to this, go to this, go to this. So it's something we could perhaps work in to share. I'm not saying it's going to solve all of these, but the more resources that we can, and it is a publicly available document that we could share. So I think these are some things we could definitely follow up on and think about some different creative ways from both sides, both from a SEAC perspective as well as from a staff perspective on how we can help to improve communication and information. Yeah, go ahead, Mary, and then we'll move.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. We have a soundbite that says you can have an IEP without identification. Is that what you mean?
We have we have a soundbite that talks about the process when you run into barriers within your own school.
Yeah. Okay, so if I could just say a couple of quick things to that. So I think, again, if a principal tells you something, you're not going to go to the superintendent because you think, okay, that's the answer, right? You think that's the answer. But I will say too, I'm going to retract my earlier comment a tiny bit. It wasn't my kids so much, but in my early days when I was kind of frustrated because things were taking too long, and I sent an email to the superintendent at the time, and I just really I just wasn't sure what the process was. So I just wanted to ask about the process. And then I got a phone call from the CERTs, like, did you contact the board? And they were upset. And it seemed like they had kind of gotten in trouble for putting me in a position where I was contacting the superintendent. So, it does happen, right? It does happen.
To share that with everybody, and then we can take a look at how to incorporate that, and we can take a look at the wording for the SEAC soundbite. I'm a big fan of knowledge translation and knowledge mobilization, and making sure that we're communicating the information that needs to be communicated so that we can be more effective in it. So I definitely think it's something that we could jump on, and we can incorporate some of these pieces. And if this is something that's going out in the newsletters, then maybe it's something that everybody's going to read. But yeah, so I think there's a couple of different prongs that we can approach on it for sure. Yeah. Perfect. So is there anything else for SEAC discussion items? If not, I'll move to item number 11. Okay, perfect. So meeting summary and next steps. We do have a couple of things to follow up. I know that Margaret's been taking diligent notes. I can see her over there nodding her head. So we do have a couple of things that we will make sure that we get out to everybody. If you don't, please just follow up with us. Everybody is busy. There's lots of things going on. Just shoot an email. Haven't heard of this. Can you please follow up on this? Please just let us know. Right. That would be great because, again, life gets the best of us at times. So that would be great. Okay, next agenda is Monday, December the 11th. Please wear something Christmassy if you can. We will have a bit of a Christmas themed. We're going to try to have some treats here, and let's just have a really great meeting to kick off before we head into to Christmas. And resolution re-absentees. So I know that we did receive, I'm like, Jessica, Emma, and Amanda. Could I have a motion to for resolution of absenteeism? Maria, thank you. Seconded. Trish, great. Her favorite part is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn? I say that just as I'm tired. Motion, thank you. So that's moved by Trish. Do I have a seconder? Mandy, thank you so much. All right. Our closing prayer, if you will all join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work so that it may always be said over every act, God saw that it was good. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night.